Well, hello and good evening everyone, and I would like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone along here this night to the Benarty Centre. Louise Batchelor is a member of the Scottish Green Party. She was BBC Scotland's Environment and Transport correspondent, and before that a reporter and news presenter working on Reporting Scotland Newsnight. In 2008 she left BBC Scotland after a 30-year career to go freelance. She is now very pleased to be supporting the Yes campaign. Louise Batchelor.
Well, thanks very much, Diane, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a fantastic turnout for such a rotten night, and I'm glad to say I still stayed just down the road, so it was a pretty easy journey for me tonight. It's really good to be in Gordon Brown's constituency, and I hope you're grateful for everything he's done for you. It was particularly good to see him warning us that the Yes campaign posed a threat to our pensions, especially given his role in creating the pensions black hole. But he obviously has no sense of history or irony, or he wouldn't have done it. It's been a funny old week altogether for the Yes campaign. A poll last Sunday, commissioned by Scotland on Sunday, suggested that we only needed a 2% swing and we would be independent. And I suddenly felt really excited and slightly scared, but I just thought, this is going to happen now. I thought for the first time people were seeing through the scare tactics of Gordon Brown and Alistair Darling and everybody else. And then I watched a BBC documentary about what women want. And it's one of the suggestions that men are twice as likely to vote for independence as women. And it made me feel really despondent again, because a lot of the women said they didn't engage in politics. A lot said, fair enough, they wanted facts and they wanted certainties, but the documentary suggested that they weren't prepared to look them up. They were too busy looking at wedding dresses and playing bingo, which, I thought, this is just too bad. The next morning there was a phoning on Radio Scotland, and a No campaigner, another woman, said her husband had a good job in the financial sector. Her kids, young kids, would definitely be going to university, and she didn't mind paying £1,200 a month for childcare because it enabled her to get back to work. And I found that really depressing. Not least, I wanted to say, your husband has no security in the financial sector. There is no absolute certainty that your kids will be going to university. And the taxpayers anywhere holding up, likes of RBS, as we've been hearing today again. And I just felt how we need a much better economic model, how incredibly uncertain the current state of affairs is, and how we need not to depend on a single massive employer, the likes of the RBS, and of course in the past, the pits round here. So that's why I'm a Scottish Green, and that's why I'm voting for independence, because I believe everything needs to be brought closer to us, and to a more manageable scale and a human scale. But then I felt cheered again tonight to hear that the CBI have decided they're not any longer in the No campaign, in case anyone missed that bit of news. So it's just been a bit of a roller coaster over the last few days. But the whole point for the Scottish Greens and the Yes campaign, as far as we're concerned, is that we believe in bringing political and economic structures closer to home and decision-making closer to the people of Scotland. Devolution is of course a start, but for the fundamental change that we're looking for, we feel we have to go the whole way towards independence. A lot of voters, like the woman who phoned into Radio Scotland, said they don't want independence because they're afraid of change. They want things to stay the same, predictable. Well, the only thing that's predictable, apart from, as we know, death and taxes, is change itself. nothing stays the same. But we could have more control over that change if we vote yes. My husband, from across the way in Kelty, remembers growing up in the 1950s with smog sometimes so thick that his mother had to shine a torch in front of the car in order for them to see their way and not go off the road. He also remembers the innumerable pit bins all the way up and down the place. Our kids have grown up in Scotland well, knowing Loch Awe Meadows only as a place to take the dog for a walk, to learn to surfboard, to learn to sail. That's what we've done there. A wonderful green and pleasant place. Change beyond recognition in this area within one generation. And that's my point really, for everyone who thinks that voting no means everything staying the same. It won't. You know, within a generation, our kids will be doing something completely unpredictable, or their kids will be doing something completely unpredictable. Westfield might become a theme park by then. You never know. Well, actually, the one thing that's predictable is that Westfield will be just the same, I think. But that's where the Yes campaign needs to look much further than Alex Salmond, and even he acknowledges that and did so at the recent party conference. The Scottish Greens believe that this is a chance to bring about radical change. Things as they are under devolution are not as good as it gets, as Joanne Lamont has been telling us. Devolution has delivered some improvements, but independence could deliver so many more. Now, being a Green, I'm interested in the environment and everything that can be done with the land, and actually I believe that if we get the land right, if we get the structures right, then everything else flows from that. So land reform legislation has given us some limited right to buy, mostly for Highland communities, and enshrined the right of access. Now that's a law that would never have got through Westminster, not least because there's too much vested interest in the House of Lords blocking that kind of thing. I'd like to see it go much further. Far too much land is held in the hands of too few people. 2/3 of all the private land in Scotland is owned by 1,200 individuals, which I'm guessing is about the population of Benarty, the parish of Benarty. Just imagine. At the same time, land for housing is in short supply, so that younger people are struggling to find the mortgages and the rents on even the smallest of homes. That situation has to change. The Scottish Greens would like to see a land value tax to help bring an end to land banks, the system where you get land hoarded by developers who do nothing with it, but simply wait for some planning change in order for the value to rise, so that we the people vote through our councils for development on that land without them actually putting an extra penny into it. The land suddenly rises in value. Land value tax would also be a way of raising local council revenue and would replace the business tax. It would begin the process of breaking up these big estates, especially further north. On energy, the Scottish Government have some control, mostly in the planning sense, over what goes on in Scotland, but Scotland needs total control, leaving scope to invest in the vast potential of renewables that we have, as well as in local heating and power schemes, which would help to break up the power of the big six. So huge investments needed there, and the Greens would look to North Sea oil revenues for that. We don't believe in exploiting every last drop, but we believe in taking about 1/3 so as not to fuel climate change, and investing it wisely in likes of tidal energy, wave energy, and offshore wind, as well as to some extent in more onshore wind. At the moment, Scotland's green energy producers have to pay extra the further they are away from the southeast of England. And that, we keep coming back to that, everything dominated by what's happening down in the southeast of England. Our lives are driven by the economy down there, where property investment is all, where the City of London is the keystone to the economy and everything else has to serve it. The main areas of our lives, tax and welfare, are controlled by a government 400 miles away, one we didn't vote for. And then we're told by likes of Gordon Brown that this gives us security, sharing the burden of tax and benefits. It doesn't seem to be very well done. How have we ended up with a situation where companies like Amazon and Starbucks pay little or no tax, pretty low wages as well? Both the Greens and the SNP would like to see these corporate tax loopholes closed, and we'd like to see far more support for medium and small-sized businesses. Not only Westminster, but even local authorities can seem remote. And I read the other day about the great democratic deficit in Scotland, which leaves one councillor for 4,000 people on our local authorities, whereas in Germany it's something like 1 to 400. In France it goes down to 1 to 125. That's extraordinary. It's not the only gap. The gap between rich and poor is wider than ever. And one thing I learned as a BBC environment correspondent, especially around here, is how often poorer communities are dumped on. Open cast mines followed by landfill, which at least you managed to fight off here. Scotland's been dumped on big time by Trident, our biggest single environmental threat, as well as the biggest single threat to life, ours and many abroad. And I've seen, well, I'd like to see that on the Thames, I was going to say. They may have to put up with it. I've seen at first hand the consequences of Westminster leading negotiations over fishing and farming. Scottish farmers have consistently lost out when it comes to subsidies. The bulk of the UK fishing industry is in Scotland, though the man always is a man at the table in Brussels every Christmas when they renegotiate fish quotas is always a Westminster minister. So Scottish Greens want full independence, and that includes eventually our own currency. We see independence very much as the start of a process of change in Scotland, major structural change to the way we're governed, and changes to society from top to bottom. And I've indicated a lot less top and a lot less bottom. So finally, we think this is just the start. Scotland's environment is suffering from many problems: overfishing, overgrazing, loss of wildlife, impacts of climate change, pollution, and yet we have some of the best resources anywhere in the world. We believe it's not too late to turn things around, and that independence is the mechanism for doing it. Thank you.